go. 7:01. Welcome everyone to the July 21st, 2026 regular Village Council meeting. We'll call this meeting to order, and we'll mute our cell phones, please, and I'll ask Manager Kazinas to do a roll call for attendance.
Trustee Myers.
Here.
Trustee Apatow.
Here.
Trustee Dahlman. Here. Trustee Orsick.
Here.
Trustee Albinson.
Here.
Trustee Handler.
Here.
President Dearborn.
Here, and Trustee Handler has volunteered to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kim. And Kristen, let's do a quorum check for upcoming meetings.
So our next three meetings, we have August 4th, August 18, and September 1.
I may be calling in for the August 4th one.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 4, public comments. This is the moment, the time when, if anyone in the audience would like to comment, to speak about an item not on tonight's agenda. So if you're here for climate action or zoning, whatever, you'll have to hold off. But if you're here for another item, we will welcome your comments, 3 minutes or less. And would anyone in the public like to make a comment? On something not on the agenda, Liz? Okay. You can hear it. I'm glad to, I know you can hear.
Have comments on that later.
Okay.
But I figured while I'm here, I'll make another comment. Hi, my name's Liz Kunkel, 1303 Holly Lane, resident, Go Green Winnetka, Environmental Forestry Sustainability Commissioner. And I know we've been talking more in the village about buckthorn, and I appreciate what the village has been doing to encourage residents to remove it, incentivize. We all know we can do more. And it occurred to me, so coincidentally, about a month ago, I received a letter from our village forester. We had a tree on our yard susceptible to Dutch elm that needed to be removed. And long story short, it struck me that this is what we want to do for buckthorn. We want to put it in our ordinance. We want to describe it as a weed, and we want to be able to get rid of it and make people do that. And we actually, you all have the power to do that. There was an amendment made to, I believe it was the Exotic Weeds Act, noxious weed, exotic weeds, I forget the name. 2023, I know, 2023, I love it so much because what it does is give municipalities in Illinois the power to do two things. And the language was so striking, it stuck with me. Number one is to eradicate buckthorn. You don't see the word eradicate in legislation very often. It's a strong word, it's there for a reason. Number two, it's not just eradicating it on public property, but private. Again, there for a reason. So we have the power to do more than just encourage folks to remove buckthorn. Obviously, it would take a few more steps, but I just want to encourage you all and us and maybe the EFSC to look into ways to make that happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. Anyone else would like to make a public comment tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We'll move on to reports, and we'll start with trustees. Trustee Myers.
On the farmer's market, we are going to have a few scheduling changes. There are some challenges that are coming up with people's schedules, so I'll send something out to the council in terms of trying to fill some slots as we go through the summer.
Great,
But
thank you.
so
It's
far,
going,
so good
it's
in
going
terms of
terrific.
Thanks everybody for the input.
It's really terrific. Trustee Apatow.
No report tonight.
Trustee Dahlman.
No report.
Trustee Orsick.
No report.
Trustee Albinson.
No report.
Trustee Handler.
No report.
Village attorney.
No report tonight.
Village manager.
No report.
My only report is that following up on Ms. Kunkel's comments, she hosted a 15th anniversary get-together of Go Green Winnetka the other night. 15 years, Liz. Congratulations. It's a terrific service to the community, and we all really enjoy getting those emails and what you do. So thank you for that. It was terrific. We'll move on to item 6, establishment of the consent agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove any item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
And that's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No one opposed? And Kristen, if you could read the items on the consent agenda.
Approval of the village council minutes from the June 9th, 2026 special meeting and the June 16th, 2026 regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated July 3rd, 2026 to July 16, 2026, and the amount of $771,619.34. Ordinance number MC 03-2026, amending the Winnetka zoning ordinance to prohibit short-term rentals in the village for adoption. Resolution number R 55-2026, waiving bidding and approving the purchase of indoor range equipment and services from Inverus Training Solutions Incorporated for adoption. Resolution number R 57-2026, approving the purchase of a public works vehicle from Trans Chicago Truck Group for adoption. Resolution number R 58-2026, approving closed session minutes, determining the need to keep minutes of certain closed meetings of the village council confidential, and authorizing the destruction of verbatim recordings of certain closed meetings of the village council for adoption, and approval of annual outdoor seating area permits.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
And Kristen, that's a roll call vote.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Orsick?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Apitoff?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 8, ordinances and resolutions. 8A, resolution number R 54-2026, approving and authorizing the adoption of the Village of Winnetka Climate Action Plan. And we have kind of two parts on this. The first part is the Village and IMEA Sustainability Plan update. And then we have an electric generation update. Is that how we're doing this? Okay. Tonight, council will consider a proposed climate action plan, which is aspirational in nature and meant to be a guide used in coordination with community partners. Additionally, council will be provided an update on the village and IMEA's sustainability plans and the status of electric generation. And here to present initially here is our sustainability manager, Elise Steiner, to review. Hello, Elise.
Hello, and thank you. And before I dive into the slides, I just want to note that it's fitting to be doing this Climate Action Plan presentation today during Chicago's inaugural Climate Week. It's been a big deal downtown with people coming from all over the country to talk about climate challenges. And secondly, I just want to note that the origins of this Climate Action Plan can be traced back to the comprehensive plan that was adopted by the village. Pillar 4 is dedicated to the environment and climate change, and in that document, there's a mention for a climate action plan. So I just want to thank you for your support and for delivering on this initiative for the residents who thought it was important to include that in the comprehensive plan. So let's start by answering the question of what is a climate action plan? It's an organization's detailed and strategic framework for measuring, planning, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions over time. And it typically consists of 3 core elements. The first is that it measures existing greenhouse gas emissions to establish a baseline from which progress can be measured. It sets measurable, time-bound, long-term emission reduction targets, and it identifies the strategies and actions that will be implemented in order to achieve those targets. What this plan does not include is other types of environmental protection actions and priorities, such as dark skies or conserving water resources. Those are out of scope for a climate action plan. The village and other stakeholders, such as the Park District, schools, businesses, and community groups, will work together to put the climate action plan into action. This is not merely things that the village is expected to implement. We won't reach our target if it's just the village. We need all of our partners working together to reduce emissions. And finally, there are some large projects that are included in the action plan that require planning and large capital expenditures. We know that those are not authorized, and we'll come back to Village Council at the appropriate time to proceed. Why do an action plan? Winnetkins care greatly about the environment and leaving a livable planet behind for future generations. As I mentioned, the Winnetka Futures 2040 Comprehensive Plan dedicated a whole pillar to climate action. The Village Council has passed a resolution supporting sustainability and climate action. In the Winnetka Caucus, the surveys have revealed resident preferences for open spaces and environmental action. We have community groups like Go Green Winnetka and Friends of the Green Bay Trail and others that actively protect wildlife, encourage eco-friendly choices. And we have residents voluntarily serving on the EFSC that are actively engaged on these issues. And this climate action plan demonstrates the community's commitment to addressing climate change and making appropriate infrastructure investments and transitioning to cleaner energy over the long term. It will serve as a roadmap for decision-making and resource allocation, and progress can be measured over time to maintain accountability. We engaged a consulting firm, Caramita, to help us lead this process, and their expertise, they conducted interviews and collected data and helped us through this process. There's more detail on that in the actual plan. I'm not going to go into it right now. But we did follow a data-driven approach to produce this plan tailored to the unique characteristics, priorities, and resources of the Village of Winnetka. And we will continue to collaborate with our community and village partners on the implementation and status updates. This this image is of a dashboard that contains all the data for the greenhouse gas inventory that we can make public once the plan is adopted, and then periodically update it to see our progress. This is a short list of some of the environmental stewardship and initiatives that have been done in the past in Winnetka. It can be found on page 7 in the report, so I'm not going to read it all, but it just highlights what the village has done along with some of our partners in making progress. It's just a representative list. It's not all-inclusive, but shows that we've already done quite a lot and are starting from a good place as we embark on this journey. Getting now into a little bit more of the data, the greenhouse gas emissions inventory grouped emissions into 4 source categories: the emissions from buildings and energy, from transportation, from waste, and from forestry and land, which acts as a sink. And you'll see in the pie chart that it's probably no surprise to most people here that the majority of the emissions are coming from residential buildings, followed by transportation, and then commercial buildings and municipal operations, and waste are the smaller slivers of the pie. And the bar chart on the bottom, I wanted to include, I know it's not very exciting to look at, but it highlights the need to keep natural gas in the conversation. A lot of the time, people think of electricity and the generation mix coming from the grid when we talk about emissions, but it's really important to keep in mind that over half of the residential emissions are coming from on-site direct use of natural gas for heating and cooking, laundry, and hot water heating. So it's important to make progress in that area too. It's sort of like, you know, the grid is going to decarbonize and get cleaner over time, we expect, as it has been. But natural gas, there really isn't a solution to that other than switching over to electrified appliances. So it's kind of like buying an electric or a regular car today. It's going to be on the road for a long time using gasoline when you could buy an electric option. Here's the long-term target that we're proposing. It's 40% below 2022 baseline by 2040. And that's a combination of actions to be taken in the village as well as the decarbonization in the generation mix of the grid. So as fossil fuel sources retire and are replaced by cleaner energy, that will help us move towards our goal. And then you can see here the comparable benchmarking targets of our neighbor communities that show that this 40% by 2040 seems like a realistic, attainable, and achievable yet ambitious goal. It's well in line with some of these other communities. The reduction measures are the actions that we plan to take to shift from the higher emitting activities to lower or zero emitting activities that achieve the same outcome. These are a combination of financial incentives, policies, technologies, and other types of investments that can help all combined to help us reach our target. And again, those fall into the 4 categories of buildings and energy, transportation, waste, and land and forestry. And there's a lot more detail in the report itself. And within each of the 14 reduction measures, there's a lot more detail, a comprehensive list of actions to implement, along with the time frame to implement those actions. Some are short, medium, and long term, the relative costs, and some of the co-benefits that go along with those actions. And then what happens next after this plan is adopted? The EFSC, which worked hard on this plan, will continue to work with the Village Manager's Office to identify and prioritize the short, medium, and long-term initiatives to pursue based on resources, budgets, and council's direction. And the commission will evaluate the actions and make recommendations as they're discussed. We'll come back to council to present on those. And also, we will continue to work with our village partners, like the Park District and the schools, to implement more of these programs. Our interests will be represented at IMEA meetings to make sure that what we're doing aligns with, and what IMEA is doing aligns with our strategic plans and our climate action plans. And finally, as I showed you, there's a public dashboard available that we can publish and update with some regularity. It's generally common to do 5-year interval updates of climate action plans to make sure that we're staying on track. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nick.
Thank you, Elise. Introducing our Water and Electric Director, Nick Nari.
Thank you, Elise. Thank you, President Dearborn and Council. So I just have a few slides here to present on, and then I'll hand it back over to Elise. So just to provide an update on the IMEA sustainability front. IMEA adopted its sustainability plan back in 2024. Brian Keys, as the former electric director and IMEA board member, was a key player in the development of that plan. And since then, IMEA has provided annual progress reports to the IMEA board and to the public, and they have committed to a triennial refresh of the plan, with the next revision to be approved for calendar year 2027. The 2025 end-of-year summary was included in your packet. I won't go through them line by line, but I'll be happy to answer questions if there are. And then the 2026 year-to-date accomplishments would entail the Bee Hollow Solar Project, which is 150 megawatts. That should be live by the end of the calendar year. When that is live, 21% of the energy in IMEA's portfolio will be carbon-free, which is a major milestone. A few acronyms here. CVR is Conservation Voltage Reduction, DERMS is Distributed Energy Resource Management Systems, and BESS is Battery Energy Storage Systems. All of these are initiatives that IMEA is moving forward with this calendar year. They are each in different phases, but they're at the starting point of soliciting member communities to move forward with in pilot programs to test the viability of those. And lastly, IMEA is performing its state-mandated integrated resource plan. They just recently released an RFP for contractual services to perform that work, and the expectation is that the plan will be complete by the end of 2027, third quarter of 2027. Just to enlighten you on the plan for the process for the 2027 plan update, I, as your board member for the Village of Winnetka, I'm part of a small working group updating the plan. A draft of that plan we expect to be available in the first couple weeks of August, at which point I will be providing that to you and to the public. After that point, once all board members are provided the draft of the plan, each board member will go back to their communities and solicit feedback, do their own form of stakeholder engagement for somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks. And then towards the middle of September, the expectation would be that the board members would deliver that feedback back to the working group for us to finalize a final draft for discussion at the October board meeting, and then any final small changes would be included in the final version, which would be approved at the December 2026 board meeting. It's up to each community, each board member, to determine what that stakeholder engagement looks like. In this case, council can decide how they want to perform that work, delegate that work, and then inevitably the feedback should come back to me as the board member, and I will deliver that to the other board members. So this is a picture of the 1 megawatt solar array in the city of Naperville, if you're wondering, which is a behind the meter member generator asset for IMEA. Okay, so pivoting to power generation, I've kind of broken this out into the present and the future. It's no secret that we've had some hot weather recently. The 2 recent heat waves that Winnetka experienced, our power plant was dispatched by IMEA due to grid emergencies on the PJM grid. We generated 1.8 million kilowatt hours, which was 39% of the power used during those events. So only 60% of the power we needed was actually coming from the grid. The week of the 4th of July, we generated for 90 consecutive hours. So Monday through Thursday evening, with the plant ran nonstop, which is a testament to the hard work of those individuals down there. So I really want to recognize everyone down at the power plant. Those are very difficult conditions to work in the week of the holiday, and all the machines performed just as they were supposed to, and we met all our contractual obligations. So I'm very proud of the work that they did that week. We are working, as you know, in earnest on phase 1 of the long-term plan. So we've executed the contract with Valdez. We've kicked off that project. We're working on the initial phases of the IEPA air permitting, as well as the siting of the generators at the yards and at the power plant. And lastly, if you've been paying attention to the news, it's no secret that data center loads are really affecting the market, the energy markets, as well as generator retirements. So it's kind of a double whammy. And that's led, obviously, to increases in cost. Supply is going down and demand is skyrocketing. So just as a point of reference, ComEd's supply cost has gone up over 78% since 2024. This is based on data that I have as a ComEd customer. And then just as a reminder, IMEA is vertically integrated, which means they're allowed to own resources, generating assets, which limits their market exposure. So they are not 100% exposed to the market, to the PJM and MISO markets, which means that they can mitigate some of these rising costs that we see in the power markets. And then pivoting towards the future, the state of Illinois did a resource adequacy study towards the end of last year, and that study, the results of that were that there are projected to be serious issues by 2029, 2030. PJM as a RTO is not that far behind the state of Illinois. What this means in practical purposes is that the possibility of load shedding, which is a polite term for forced blackouts or rolling blackouts, is going to increase to maintain system reliability. The goal of PJM or MISO is to keep the grid from having cascading catastrophic failures, so they'll do whatever it takes to avoid that scenario. However, with the phased long-term generation plan that you have approved, if everything goes according to plan, the village will have local generation to cover 95% of its peak by 2030. So those units I discussed at the power plant and the yards, once they're up and running, combined with our existing units and our steam power, we'll be able to cover close to 100% of our peak load just in time for these serious issues to come to a head. And then lastly, energy prices are only going to continue to rise as demand outstrips supply. There seems to be no slowdown in the construction of data centers. PJM has forward pricing already through 2029, so we already know what the pricing is going to be, and there's no signs that trend is going to reverse.
That's incredible.
Okay, so pivoting again. This is the last slide for me, and then I'll let Elise come back up. So just wanted to provide you an update on another topic that's very important in the village, which is our lead service line replacement plan. This graph that you see, the two bars, the red bar is the planned removals. Sorry, the total lead service lines remaining on the system, and the blue bars are the running total of the red lead service lines removed. So we started with around 1,500. The goal is to get to 0 by 2035, which would actually be ahead of our state mandated requirements. So again, as a reminder, the LSL RNA was a state law enacted in 2022. It was an unfunded mandate that requires that all water suppliers remove all lead service lines from their system. As part of our adherence to that law, we're required to maintain a lead service line inventory and publish a plan. Both of those are available on our village website. We remove lead service lines from our system in a variety of ways. New single-family homes typically are receiving a new copper line, and it's often an older home with a lead service that's getting demolished. So that goes towards our efforts. Our 1% water main replacement program typically addresses a large quantity of lead service lines because it's in the older parts of town. We also occasionally have leaks on lead services. State law prohibits us from doing permanent repairs. So if a leaking lead service appears, we are required to have it fully replaced with copper. And then lastly would be our voluntary program. So since 2023, we've offered up to $5,000 to residents to offset the cost of replacing their lead service. So since the start of the program through this half of this year, we've issued just over $1.1 million in rebates, and the lifetime program cost could reach $6 million in rebates. We've really made really good headway at the start of this program. So from 2023 through April of this year, we've removed 415 lead service lines, or about 28% of the total. So like I said, we are aiming to be more aggressive than the state mandate. And part of that is the rationale that went into our decision to put more funding towards additional voluntary slots this year. As you know, the Willow Road water main project has been partially deferred into 2027. That being said, the water funds portion that was going to fund that replacement, staff elected to allocate $500,000 towards an additional 100 slots, 100 rebates. The logic being that the sooner we do this, the better. The cost of this work is only going to get more expensive, and we'd really want to get a head start on replacing these as soon as possible. So that being said, the decision was made to up those voluntary slots, and the goal being to replace somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 200 lead service lines this year. So
Okay.
that's my last slide. I can throw it
Thank
back
you,
to
Nick.
Elise.
Wanna-
Yep.
I have a question.
Hang on one second here. Come on up, Elise. So before we go to public comment, we'll ask council if they have questions for Elise or Nick on climate action plan, electric generation, IMEA, and then we'll go to public comment. Go ahead, Rob.
I got two quick ones. Is there a waiting list on the lead service lines as far as demand?
We, with adding the 100 slots, we've pretty much captured the entire waiting list. So
So do we need
prior
to-
to that, there was a waiting list.
Do we need to go back out and remind, we still have a long ways to go. We have to go back and remind people they need to do this.
I'm sorry?
We have to go back and remind people that they need to do this? Is this out of sight, out of mind?
So part of that state mandate is every March, if you have a lead service, you've probably got the letter. We're required to give a letter to every resident at the start of the year,
Great.
reminding them you have a lead service. These are the methods in which you could replace it. So
Great.
it's an annual notice you're required to hand out.
Can you go back to page 11?
Yep. 11, sorry, yep.
So the 39%, is that kicked back into the IMEA, into the consortium, or is that, we're using that ourselves first? As far as the power that we generated, the 1.8 million?
Generated, we use it.
Right, so that is added back onto our bill, but the compensation we receive is in the form of capacity credits. So if you recall, we have about 22 megawatts of capacity, and IMEA assigns that a value, and then we get that value as a credit on our wholesale bill throughout the entire year.
Yeah.
And then for the power that we generate, we also get a smaller credit, but the majority of the credit actually comes in the form of capacity, because that provides value to IMEA during those emergency
Right.
circumstances, because it's power that they don't have to get from the grid.
But Nick, that power is staying in Winnetka.
Correct, yep.
Correct. That's
Yep.
power we're
Yes.
we are using internally here.
Yes, we are, for technical reasons and contractual reasons, we are not supposed to push power onto ComEd's system. So the power generated always stays in Winnetka.
It's interesting, when we were just discussing this plan to move forward, the numbers I thought those would be in the future numbers. ComEd supply cost up over 78%. Those are future numbers that are happening now, which is pretty alarming.
Yep, and like I
So-
said, PJM has capacity prices already published through 2029, so we already know what the prices are going to be.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions, just a definitional question, voltage reduction. You want to explain the
Yes.
significance of that and how does it apply to Winnetka?
Yes, so what conservation voltage reduction is if your house is you're the very last house, you're the farthest one from the substation, legally, we have to provide you a certain voltage range, but the losses in the lines are directly equivalent to the voltage on the line. So what conservation voltage reduction does is it determines how low can we set the voltage at the substation in order to maintain voltage for you as the farthest customer. And then what that does is we're still meeting our contractual obligations, but we're lowering the amount of losses on the lines.
And is that something we do within Winnetka, or is that something that IMEA does or ComEd does?
I know that Naperville already has the system established. IMEA is working with another community to set up a pilot to run it, where IMEA actually will perform that service on their behalf. These measures that I mentioned, staff's recommendation would be to allow us to finish the AMI program first and get all those smart meters deployed.
Yeah.
Have that good data to work with, and then we can come back and
Okay.
debate these programs. But yes, we could, once we have that technology in place, we could consider CVR
Yeah.
as a resource.
Yeah, and when we do discussion, I want to come back to that AMI, because I think part of it is, my guess is there's a lot of things we can do with that data in terms of not only that, but incenting residents in different ways to reduce power usage, potentially even talking with North Shore Gas in terms of getting data to help them reduce gas usage. So
Correct,
We
yeah.
can come back and talk
AMI is
about
going to
that
open
some
a
more.
lot of doors. We're going from you only getting a bill every 2 months, and we have no idea when you use the power, to now
Right.
you'll be able to see down to the 15-minute intervals when you're using the electricity.
Right,
So it's,
right.
yeah.
The other question I had is, great, end of year, IMEA is going to be at 21% carbon-free. What's the next goal? What's the next thing that they're working on? And is that part of the strategy, group that you're working with, or?
Right, so they have some expiring renewable contracts. I believe in 2030, a wind farm is expiring, so they're already working on that. That's part of the rationale for the early contract renewals, because they need to know who is going to be at the table. These contracts that they're entering into are 20-plus year contracts, so now that they know the majority of who the players are going to be, they can go out in the market and find these renewable contracts to continue to increase that carbon-free portfolio. All
So-
towards the 2050 is the net zero goal, 2050.
So what's the timing on when they'll have enough information and enough conversations to be able to say, all right, we're at 21, here's the next step that's going to take us to 25 and to 30, and the path, in a sense, to get there?
Right, I would say that IMEA staff are likely already making those evaluations now that they have 29 of the 32 members signed up. They have more than critical mass. The issue would be if there are other remaining members that elect to sign up, that would obviously change the amount of capacity and power they need to purchase. So that would be a consideration that the board and the agency has to make. What does that look like for a member that comes late to the
I'm just
equation?
kind of pushing you on this, Nick, in terms of,
Yeah.
so when would we get a view of what the path is that IMEA is setting? Is that
That's part
later
of-
this year?
Yep.
Conversation that you said coming back, or is that next year?
No, that's within the 2027
Okay.
plan. It's a refresh. We've made a lot of ground. There's been a lot of technological changes since 2024. So you will see that in the draft of the 2027 plan, what the path forward is.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Other questions for Nick and/or Elise? No? No? why don't we open this up for public comment? Would anyone like to make a public comment on IMEA, sustainability, climate action plan? I see some EFSC members are here, interested parties are here. Would you like to come on up and make a comment? King, come on up.
Well, this is an important moment in the life of Winnetka's commitment to the environment. This climate action plan is the product of, as Elise said, it goes back to the comprehensive plan, and so many people were responsible for this. And I just want to say thank you to all of them, to Elise, to Karamita, am I pronouncing that right? Our consultants, to all the people, all the Winnetka residents who showed up for our open house back in December, to my fellow EFSC members. This is really an important a public commitment by the village about our commitment to preserving the environment and sustainable living, and it's really heartening to see. And so the next part is, how do we make sure that this doesn't stay on the shelf, and what are we going to do to make these goals become reality over the next several years? And I'm also heartened that the Environmental Commission is included in this, that you're looking to guidance. Over the 18-year history of our commission, there's been times when they haven't really been used to their full potential, I might say. But I think this is really kind of an exciting opportunity for the EFSC to be a clearinghouse for Winnetka residents, people who have good ideas that they'd like to see considered. And I'm looking forward to us, providing that to the village council as we go on. And so I think we're in some ways limited only by our imagination, but also we have to be smart about this and be grounded in good economics. But this is an opportunity for leadership, and it's really something that has been long in the making, and I'm very grateful that we're here right now. And so as far as going forward, Nick, thank you for the review with the IMEA's, I guess you might call it its report card for the last year. And it came out in December, and I know it's going to, I think it comes out every December. Is that how it works? I hope next year when it comes out, we can have this public report card, maybe in the winter. And I think it's great they have this refresh now, and I hope this is an opportunity for the community, including the EFSC and anybody who has an interest in how Winnetka is being served by IMEA, to make their voices heard. Because, with anybody who's paying electric bills in Winnetka, this is your opportunity to weigh in, and this is how we get public input. So I'm really glad that Nick is part of this committee for the refresh, and I hope we can have some discussions later on this summer about what is taking shape with this new 3-year proposal. So all in all, lots to be thankful for, and good things in the offing here for Winnetka and its leadership on sustainability and the environment. So thank you.
Thank you, King. He didn't introduce himself, but that's King Poor.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Member of our EFSC, member of our Plan Commission. Just to make a couple other introductions, we have the chairman of our EFSC in the back, Peter Eck. Peter, do you have anything to say about this? Oh, sure. Why not? Come on up. So Peter is chairman of our EFSC. We have Liz Kunkel, member of the EFSC here, so we are well represented.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving us the time and considering this topic. So when I first learned about the Climate Action Plan, I was I think it was when I was new into my role chairing the commission, and we were working on building out our opportunities database of all the things that we thought could be good ideas, kind of getting ideas on the list and trying to be focused and prioritized to make sure that we're working in the highest impact areas. And I think we had in the ballpark of a dozen ideas on the list. And so I learned about the Climate Action Plan, and Elise was bringing us up to speed that this was getting underway. And we were talking about the scope, and we said, well, how many different ideas or areas are they going to explore? And I heard dozens. And right away I was excited. I was like, well, we have maybe a dozen right now, so dozens more would be great. And then she clarified, well, within that, those are just the areas. Within that, they're actually going to have a handful of specific opportunities identified, changes that can be made. So, call it 6 times 12, and you add that on top of, our 10 to 12 to begin with, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, goes from being a list to a database, and that's a database that can guide us for years to come, so we can continue to try to focus on high impact areas. And the data is really interesting. I didn't realize before seeing this just how impactful something like heat pumps can be. I don't think heat pumps are particularly political, so that's wonderful. Green renovations and green demolitions, another really interesting area for us to explore that has significant climate impact benefits. EVs, we already did the work on making residential solar easier in Winnetka. We haven't really gone deep on how to support EVs in this community, and so that's another area that we can explore that should be very high impact. So to me, it all goes back to trying to be really focused and deliberate with our work and making sure that we are delivering the greatest benefit to the community. And I think this just gives us a wealth of information to guide that work and to make us, to put us in a position to be very deliberate and strategic. So we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. Would anyone else like to make a public comment? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Katie Scullion, and I was here a lot last year in anticipation of the IMEA contract renewal. And as you know, I was opposed to that. So I'm here tonight because I actually wanted to talk about the report card and how I believe we could do maybe a more have better accountability for IMEA on this. And we have amazing experts in town who could help us do a dashboard / report card to help oversee this so that instead of, Scott, I think your questions to Nick are fair to ask, but rather than asking what IMEA is doing, we should be sending Nick to those meetings to vote in our interest. And so I want to bring up a couple of things happening that residents from other communities who are IMEA residents have been asking for, and I don't think it's been articulated here, so what I will do is I will tomorrow send you the full list, but to give you an idea of what it is, there is a lack of transparency in how IMEA releases information to the community board members and to residents. That includes a simple thing such as they don't record their board meetings, which is hard for those of us trying to follow. We would like to be able to watch them. Most governmental units do. They're like sort of getting around some exclusions about nonprofits. They are not a nonprofit. We think it's an ask that if our community, you said we are IMEA, then we should be able to ask for it. Let's record it. Some of the other things on the list that they are not doing is they aren't releasing what their lobbying activity is. So we know in previous years they've hired lobbyists to keep the coal plant open, which I think is in opposition to our emissions goals and our climate action goals, things like that. And I don't think Winnetka has made a stand yet. I don't think the trustees, we've polled the community about what our stand would be on who those lobbyists are, but we should at least be able to know who we're paying to lobby on behalf of IMEA, especially in Washington, D.C. There's not much data in financials, and this might be a surprise to you, but there's not a lot of information about the methodology for the socialized cost. So for example, the peaker plant right now is generating we're getting paid less money than the market is paying for it. There is not a lot of information about energy generation cost or the coal plant transmission billing, and there's a longer list. I'm going to stop there. Okay, and I'm going to be I really don't want to be the person that says this, but
Well, Katie, you're at 3 minutes, so say it.
my family did not put in an electric car charger or solar. I know many people here did, but our contract, our IMEA contract, buys a proportional share of whatever IMEA assets generate. I know there was confusion about this last year. Please let me know if I'm wrong. Those plants will continue to run even if we lowered our emissions to zero.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I think that should be a little bit communicated on the climate action report. I'd be happy to talk to you about it, but it's a little misleading to say our emissions go down and emissions go down. Our emissions are still going to be produced in downstate in the 2 coal plants.
Thank you, Katie.
Okay.
Would anyone else like to make a public comment? Liz, come on up.
Hi again. Thank you for all you're doing on this front. I know it's not easy. I do want to build on both things Elise said and Katie said. Real quick on the EMEA front, something I just want to make sure we do in our community is leverage every single last bit of our financial and intellectual and educational resources to just make sure we're making the best choice and not just resting into what we can do because it's an easy, we've got it, it ain't broke, don't fix it. I like what I'm hearing tonight, but I just want to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure we are doing the best for our village in terms of our options moving forward. I think we all like options. So I still want to explore other options to kind of flesh out our portfolio here in Winnetka. And so again, just generally within EMEA or within the issue of EMEA, encourage and ask you all to keep an open mind to other alternatives to complement what we're doing with EMEA and what we can do and how we can leverage our own resources in the village maybe more effectively. On the climate action plan, again, thank you very much for considering it. Wasn't actually thinking of this, but Elise mentioned that this was sort of born out of the 2040 comprehensive plan. It actually started a long time before that. It kind of started with King coming in 2009 and helping to form the Environmental and Forestry Commission because the Mayor's Caucus took work that community did, that we did at that time, to create its Greenest Region Compact, which then became like a framework that everybody could use in our area within the Mayor's Caucus. We ended up using it within 2017, which was when I was appointed to the EFSC, and then President Rintz brought it to the council, and it became the framework that we, the EFSC, started looking at to create. It wasn't a climate action plan at the time, it was sort of more an inventory, but honestly, to give former EFSC chair Chuck Dowding credit, he used a Northwestern intern, and we worked with her actually during the first year of COVID virtually to help come up with a draft climate action plan that actually then was incorporated into the comprehensive plan. So it was sort of all of it. So again, thank you for all the work that's been done throughout the years to carry it forward, and I'm excited to see the form it's in now and what we can do in the years to come. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Seeing none, we'll close public comment on this agenda item and bring it back to the dais here for final trustee comments. Trustee Handler.
Okay, I'll go first here. I am Kim Handler. I'm the liaison to the Environmental, Forestry, and Sustainability Commission. And in that role, I think I'd like to speak on behalf of all of us to thank everybody who's contributed to this effort. Certainly, as everybody's mentioned who's spoken so far, a great deal of expertise, community input, time has gone into preparing this document. I appreciate the commitment of the residents who've come forward, all the commissioners, the consultants, and the staff who provided input for this plan. It's important for us to remember that for all of us to remember that this is a beginning rather than an end point. And I think we're all excited to take a leadership role here on adopting this plan as a starting point. This document's going to provide a framework for all of us for future discussions, but it's important for us to remember and the community to know that Every recommendation, every specific recommendation that would come forward would still be evaluated by its own merits before, as it comes before the council. As Elise mentioned, that she and other staff will be working with partners in the community, everything on very specific action steps that we can be taken under the umbrella of this climate action plan. But again, each one would be evaluated on its own merit. As we move forward, I think we're all going to keep up with the same philosophy that we followed, where we balance, we've always respected environmental stewardship, but we want to balance that with, as King touched on, fiscal responsibility. But I'd add practicality, public safety, and certainly the character of our community. I think we certainly want every program that we put, or every project we put into place to be a success under the guidelines that this climate action plan is putting forward. And of course, I hope as these projects will come forward, we'll all keep an open mind and evaluate it under those circumstances. I think this is a great start for the community. I'm excited that Winnetka is going to take a leadership role here and adopt a plan like this.
Great. Thank you, Kim, for that. Kirk?
Great presentation. Thanks for all the hard work to everybody involved, in full support of the climate action plan that's being proposed.
Terrific. Bridget?
I agree. I'm in full support of this, and thank you to Kim, who has been working hard on it despite having a lot of other things going on, and to everybody who has made this possible and started things a long time ago and educated all of us along the way. And I agree, it's a start, but it's a great start. And having things that we can aim for and achieve is nothing but beneficial.
Terrific. Trustee Dahlman?
Not a lot to add. In full support of this. I love the fact that we have Nick and Elise there moving the end line, goal line forward each time. And thank you for your leadership on this and full support. Thank you to all the volunteers too who have participated on this process.
Trustee Apatow?
Also in full support, and again, thank you to Elise and also Nick for, of course, we all want transparency and all the answers, but I think we appreciate the work that Nick has done in getting us as much information and up-to-date information as we have. So thank you both, and I'm in full support.
Trustee Myers?
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach here. So I'm in support of it, but I'm going to challenge the EFSC and also the council on this. You know, when we approved IMEA, I think we all did it kind of begrudgingly, because we all recognize the environmental cost. And we made a commitment to ourselves and to the village to say we were going to be more aggressive on the environmental front, on taking actions, right? And we're thinking about some of those in terms of, you know, putting in our own solar field. But I think the EFSC did a really good job, a very respectful job in the sense of saying, here are some great ideas, but I don't think you challenged us enough. For example, right, you mentioned heat pumps. Well, what about saying, okay, every house that gets built in Winnetka, we will subsidize a heat pump, and the village will get paid back out of the savings that we can estimate, right? Or if somebody has an existing house and they want to buy a new furnace, well, what if we said we will subsidize the difference between the cost of a furnace and a heat pump, but here again, you got to pay us back out of some of your reduced energy costs over time. I don't know what that time is. I don't know what the payback is. You know, we're going to have this new automated metering system. What about rates, setting rates based on different times of the day, right? What about going to North Shore Gas and saying, we'd like to set up a data sharing agreement with you, right? We have our electrical generation, we know electrical usage. We want a data sharing agreement around gas usage. We want to be able to provide our residents that information. You know, I think we can be more assertive. I think we can be more aggressive here. I think that, you know, I look for you all to push us, and I think us to push ourselves to live up to the commitment that we made to the residents. And I think that, you know, all these things have to be time phased, and yes, we have to look at the economics, but I think we have to start with maybe something that's a little bit more aggressive than this. And I think, you know, there's some ideas out there that, you know, we're unique in that we have a AAA bond rating, we've got automated metering going in, we've got our own electric plant. We can do some things that other villages couldn't do. And I think those are the things that I would like us to be thinking about.
Okay, thank you, Scott. As Peter mentioned, there's no shortage of ideas out there. It's like a potpourri of ideas for EFSC to look at right now. And if you're not hearing it, I want to be clear, we're charging the EFSC with bringing ideas to the table that are actionable, where there is output that can be material to this community. So there's no question about that, and I happen to be very enthused about the composition of that group. I think we have terrific people that are committed to doing good work and rolling their sleeves up and doing the work. And so thank you for that. I just want to kind of make a couple comments here. Elise, thank you for bringing this to fruition. I think you did a great job. This plan, FYI, has been in front of the EFSC, I don't know how many times, guys, but there have been a lot of meetings and reviews of drafts. I want to thank Trustee Handler for her work as a liaison. She put a lot of time in on this. I want to thank the village manager and the village manager's office for doing a great job in bringing this along. This is, and I'm hearing it, I think other people are too, I think Winnetka has maybe, not to the satisfaction of everybody, but I think maybe turned the corner a little bit in the perception of, are we providing some leadership in this area? We've got a lot going on out the public yards. We've got a lot going on in the Green Bay Trail, a lot that is important for the sustainability of this community, and we're doing what we can, and I think this is a big leap forward. In terms of our electric generation, you know, Scott, you mentioned it, that plant down there is uber important to this community. It has been for 100 years, and we're committed to making the financial investment to keep that going for future generations. The ability, I mean, right now, the power market, we all read about it, it's kind of upside down. We know that. And it seems like it's getting worse in terms of supply-demand imbalances. And the ability to be 95% self-sufficient ultimately in a few years, that's unique. That's a unique characteristic in this community compared to a lot of communities around us. So we don't take that lightly. That's going to be a big investment that we're going to make, the residents are going to make in that plant. I happen to be very excited about that. And so great job by the men and women that worked through that heat wave down there. I'm sure it was 1 billion degrees in that plant. But great job. I'm not sure we had any outages. I didn't hear of any, but really tough conditions, and this old 80-year-old equipment that we have down there just probably heaved and squeaked and so on, but it worked. So all good, and I think we have a good consensus here on the climate action plan. Again, I think this is a great, Kim, to your point, a great start, definitely not the end. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R54, 2026?
So moved.
Second.
And that's a roll call vote, Kristen.
Trustee Handler.
Yes.
Trustee Orsick.
Yes.
Trustee Albinson.
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman.
Yes.
Trustee Apatow.
Yes.
Trustee Myers.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. And Elise, you made a point, and we have representatives, senior representatives from the District 36 here tonight. We have representatives from the Park District here tonight. This is a community effort. You're the sustainability coordinator for the Village of Winnetka, but that means the entire village. And so I know you're going to be reaching out to your colleagues in those jurisdictions. So very important on that front. Okay, we move on now to old business. Item 9A, zoning ordinance rewrite. And we're looking for council direction here. Tonight, the council will provide direction regarding proposed zoning ordinance rewrite. And this is a big project. It's a long-term project. But our Community Development Director, Scott Mangum, will review and sort of the next steps.
Good evening. Thank you, President Dearborn, trustees. As stated, this is about the zoning ordinance rewrite. We haven't necessarily identified the last time that the full code was rewritten, certainly more than 40 years old, and we believe some provisions may go all the way back to the beginning of the zoning ordinance in the 1920s. For example, in our D light industrial district, permitted uses include coal, coke, wood, oil, or similar storage yard or facility, as well as a dyeing or cleaning establishment and a tinsmithing or sheet metal shop. So, there, displays that. So again, there have been a number of sort of piecemeal updates, over 60 since the current village code was codified in 1996. That being done on a piecemeal basis makes it difficult to administer, interpret, and use. So this evening we would seek direction on the scope of work as well as the steering committee structure for the project. So some of the ideas and reasons why the rewrite's needed. Again, these kind of accumulated inconsistencies through ad hoc amendments over time, outdated land use categories and definitions, lack of alignment with the Winnetka Futures 2040 Comprehensive Plan, complexity and ambiguity that can delay projects in the development review process, inadequate provisions for a variety of housing types, and sustainability measures. It was mentioned that we did address, again, on an ad hoc basis, solar, but there's more to do there. Some of these issues can lead to difficulty in enforcing the code, and to address noncompliance with current state law, including the recent People Over Parking Act that went into effect early this year. So looking at implementation, again, with the 2040 comp plan that was adopted after a nearly 4-year process. We did establish at least 37 initiatives from the comp plan that could be addressed through the rewrite. Those were included in the packet as attachment 1. So we'd look at the first steps of finalizing a scope of work with the input here, issuing a request for proposals for land use consultants, and then following the consultant selection, the actual rewrite itself is anticipated to be completed in 18 to 24 months. So it is quite a heavy lift. Looking at funding, we have $75,000 within this year's budget. We do anticipate that the total project will cost around $150,000, and a final contract would be brought to the Village Council following the RFP process. Looking at the scope of work, broken out into phases. The first would be existing conditions and diagnostic review. So really taking a look at the existing zoning code, sign code, and design review regulations. Again, looking at those outdated provisions. Staff has kind of a running list going already, in addition to many notes in the margins of the existing code to work through. This would involve a public process, so community and stakeholder engagement through open houses, interviews, surveys, coordination with stakeholder groups such as the Chamber of Commerce, development community, as well as the lower boards and commissions. Then we would look into drafting the code. So preparation of the complete draft rewrite with modern zoning tools like use tables, form-based standards where appropriate, graphics that would be vetted through the steering committee. This would be reviewed and revised through presentations to the Plan Commission and Village Council. The consultant then would help with assistance with the public hearings, presentations, and adoption, and then implementation of the code. So consultant selection criteria, looking at the RFP, we'd look at experienced consultants. There are a number who have experience in this area, both locally and nationally. So other similar communities they've worked with, their qualifications, the methodology and their approach, schedule, the ability to meet the timelines and get the project completed, and of course references from other clients, and then competitiveness and cost. So one of the items that we've thought about here, and that different communities go different directions, for the composition of a steering committee that would work to review the progress of the code. The Plan Commission is one option. Plan Commission essentially filled that role for the comprehensive plan, for the Winnetka Futures Plan. So in that case, the Plan Commission could act that way and meet as a body with regular or special Plan Commission meetings, or an ad hoc committee that may have combinations of individuals from several of the boards and commissions. Those are kind of the two options identified there. So following this presentation, any comments from the public or questions? Again, the direction we're seeking are additional topics to be included in the RFP. And again, we'd be starting, with those 37 initiatives, kind of the work plan mapped out by the Winnetka Futures 2040. And then secondarily, any input on the ad hoc steering committee.
Questions for Scott? Go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I'm glad we're finally moving forward with this. One question I had, and it's a comment, if you could go back to the phase 1, 2, 3. I think as part of maybe phase 1, phase 2, maybe separate, we need to include special consultation with taxing bodies, other taxing bodies. I'm sure we would loop them into the community and stakeholder engagement as we have in any other initiative we've undertaken, whether it was the comprehensive plan or the downtown plan or, any of those plans. But obviously, we've got all of our a good number of our taxing body representatives here. I know there's some concern there, so I would just make sure that that's explicit. In terms of a potential burden on the Plan Commission, I'm kind of agnostic, having kicked off the comprehensive plan when I was chair pre-COVID, and then Bridget took it over, and then the current chair took it across the finish line. Whether we go with an ad hoc committee or the Plan Commission, but I'm curious, have we had any discussion with current chair of the Plan Commission as to perceived burden and how they would manage other workload?
I have not had that conversation with Layla.
I haven't had that conversation either, but we finished this before I left. So I think that they.
Oh, so you brought it across.
I brought it across the finish
okay,
line.
so.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. But I know that they were very engaged in this particular area of the plan and very well versed, and I don't want to overburden them, but they already have spent hours and hours on it. It should not be new material.
No, and that was my thinking too, because I think even before I left the Plan Commission, I think we were all very aware of the different pillars and the work streams and all those things. I wonder if there's a hybrid where we just.
What is the reason to not do an ad hoc where we would bring in individuals who are serving on other commissions who
Like
might
zoning
have
and-
significant years
Yeah.
of experience
Well,
who could
what
really add value?
So my thinking is that you could have Plan Commission and have maybe like we do for Plan Development Commission where we add, you create a blend there.
Well, the chairman of the zoning board is on the Plan Commission.
Yeah,
Of
Matt
course.
Brawley.
Matt is, and.
Bradley, sorry.
Matt Bradley. And I think there are maybe one or two others that would be good participants in that. So to bring them into the process, I think is.
Yeah, and I think we do that on the Plan Development Commission, and you could maybe mimic that structure because you have those representatives on the Plan
Sort of
Development
like
Commission.
Plan Development Commission plus?
Yeah. Scott, when would you need to know the nature of that decision? Is it Plan Commission, is it combination plan and zoning, some
I think
combination
we've
thereof?
got some time. If we knew it ahead of time, we'd put it in the RFP so consultants knew it.
Okay.
But frankly, I think they'll be prepared to work with the steering committee, whatever the composition is.
Okay.
So I think we've got time up until, the start of the process.
So we don't have to make that decision tonight, but Scott? Oh,
So I agree with this conversation in terms of, I think I'd be more interested in a hybrid. I wanted to kind of bring up a different point, if I can. I think one of the things that maybe has to be direction from the council into this process is, the 2040 comprehensive plan captures much of what we want the village to look like, but I think that there are maybe more tactical questions that we probably need to provide direction on. For example, I think more and more homes will begin to have their own battery packs, right? They'll have, in-home batteries. How does that work? What status do we want to establish from a safety point of view as well as just, where should they be placed? So I think that, there may be other elements like that where we either have to charge the consultant to think about those new things or we have to also be doing it. And I think if we get the right consultant, they should have a broad enough experience to bring those new ideas. So it's not necessarily, within just evaluating our code, it's what new things are coming down the road that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, and I would say, because I work in this space, you're starting to see that happening, and I would imagine any consultant is thinking, what would a zoning or zoning code look like for the next 40 years, right?
Yeah.
Batteries have pretty low impact. I think generators are the biggest,
They are bigger, yeah.
Well, I
are the
think-
biggest issue.
Yeah, I think what the decision we have tonight is, do we approve the RFP?
You do.
Retain a consultant
Sorely
within the
needed.
parameters of the budget that Scott laid out. We can decide on where this lands in terms of resident input, whether it's commission, ad hoc, whatever. We'll figure that out. Any other thoughts before we decide on that approval?
I'm all for it. I think it's great. It's long overdue. I don't think we're rewriting the Magna Carta here. I do think that the time frame is long, in my estimation, 2 years to do a rewrite. I want to be thoughtful and make sure we engage with all the other bodies. But the timeline just seems long.
It's a big lift though, Rob. I mean, we talked to Kenilworth about this. They're just completing theirs. I think it's going a couple of years, if I recall correctly, Kristen?
Yes, that's accurate, and it does. It requires, because of the steering committee, those public meetings, engaging the community, so it's
I'm
not
all for
just
that. That's good.
a find, replace, update. There's a lot of engagement in
I'm sure.
deciding.
I'm sure.
I think that there's a,
Right, we wait 2 years and then here are all the changes, right? We could
phase them.
Well,
we should begin to see.
but, I want everyone to appreciate there is a due process component
Yeah, oh,
of
yeah.
this, right? We're talking about property rights. There will be text amendment as well as a map amendment potentially, right? If we talk about classifying zoning, that's due process and public process. So you want to make sure that people have an opportunity to engage, public hearings and all those things.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I don't know, we're not voting on anything here, but I think the direction is there, Scott. Why don't we move forward on this? This is a big initiative.
Yep.
Sorry, Kirk?
Late comment.
Yep.
Question. How will this impact the design review guidelines, not the ordinance, but the guidelines? Will that also be subject to this process or a rewrite?
We thought about that a little bit. I think it is kind of a bigger document and sits on its own a little bit. I think certainly looking at the process and for certificate of appropriateness and how that's handled, different zoning districts and some of the noticing requirements, those things certainly would be looked at. I think we could look to put it in, but I think it's probably a little bit more adjacent to this process.
Don't want to muddy the waters with what we're about to recommend here. Something I think we need to think through, because I think last thing I know we want is updated zoning guidelines or ordinances and outdated design guidelines, right? Where there's going to be a complete mismatch and create confusion with potential new developments coming into town.
Yeah, potentially we could put that in the scope as an additional item and just see how a consultant would scope that out.
If it's part of the consultant's expertise, then I think it would be helpful to have that as sort of an alternate that we could consider.
Okay, Scott, can you put that as part, in terms of areas of interest here? I think in terms of going to the next steps, I think Scott has, unless people have other thoughts on this. Oh, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on the overall holistic zoning review, not the open space issue that we're about to address? Anything on zoning overall? Obviously, again, for District 36 and Park District, and you're going to be a part of this, so we'll be reaching out. No public comment. Okay, Scott, you have the direction you think you need at this point?
Yes, thank you.
For next steps.
Yes.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item, I think it's 9B. Open space zoning text amendment, and also looking for council direction here. Tonight, council will consider various options for the creation of an open space zoning district to protect and preserve open space. And before we start, I know Scott's going to get into this. I just want to comment that this issue of open space protection germinated from residents. This came from residents through surveys, caucus surveys, comprehensive plans, master plans, Cook County Forest Preserve. So this is not something that the village council cocked up out of our own heads here. This came from the residents of Winnetka, and I think Scott's going to get into that. And so this is a very specific, targeted initiative here that we're about to talk about. And it is ultimately part of the holistic review of zoning that we just went through. So, Scott, why don't you lay out sort of what we're talking about here?
Yes, thank you. So this is a follow-up from the April 14th Village Council study session. At that point, we did provide a lot of background information about feedback that had been received through a couple of years of caucus surveys about open space and preserving that, kind of what was determined to be open space and not open space. And at the end of all that discussion, there was direction from the Village Council to establish a new zoning district. And that, again, is one of the recommendations from the comprehensive plan for the purpose of preserving and protecting open space. So that was to come back from April and in July to talk about that and to do that portion of it ahead of the zoning ordinance rewrite project. So we took a look at approach in some other neighboring communities. There are communities that have a dedicated district, so a separate zoning district for schools, parks, and/or institutional or public uses. Those separate districts would have their own permitted uses or special uses and bulk and dimension standards. Those communities included Kenilworth, Norfolk, and Glenview. There were also communities, Glencoe, Wilmette, Highland Park, and Northfield, that are similar to Winnetka and do not have a standalone district for institutional open space school or park classifications. Instead, like Winnetka, these institutions, schools, parks, and others are located as special uses within a residential zoning district, mostly residential zoning district or other zoning district, and then are subject to the standards of those districts. So looking at a couple phases that the Village Council could look at and is asked to provide direction on this evening. In a first phase, to preserve open space properties from development as other uses. Again, as stated, many of the open spaces are located within residential zoning districts. So by right in those districts, single-family residential could be developed. So from this first phase, an option is for the village attorney to draft an open space zoning district ordinance. So that would be the text. With standards that would be based largely on the existing R2 single-family district. That's where most of the open spaces that have been identified are currently zoned. In this case, the standards would not be tailored to current conditions or users. In this scenario, only uses operated by the village for the purpose of providing an essential public service would be allowed by right. Other uses such as schools, library, parks, et cetera, would require special use approval as they largely do now within the existing zoning districts. In addition, the Lakefront Preservation Overlay District regulations would remain and would take precedence. So looking at this as phase 2 through the zoning ordinance rewrite, those regulations could be refined while working with partner agencies to define which uses would be permitted by right, which may be a more expansive list. Through that zoning ordinance rewrite, again, we talked about that general time frame. We'll try to do as quick as we can, but that 18 to 24 month timeline. And then through that, the existing conditions would be examined and studied for these properties, and then the standards tailored to those working in combination with the partner agencies and with the land use consultant. So looking at next steps and process, here's a process for the text amendment. As noted earlier, there is due process. There are requirements for a public hearing, notice to be published in the newspaper 15 to 30 days before. For a map amendment, there's that same notice in the newspaper that's required, in addition to mailed notice. So in that case, when you're changing the zoning classification of any individual property, there would be mailings to properties within a 250-foot radius, 10 days or more before the public hearing, and then additional notice provided to the property owners of those affected properties. In this case, the mail notice could be substantial. kind of got a initial list of maybe 40 to 45 properties or so in the village. Once you draw out those radius, 250-foot radius, that could be more than 2,500 properties that would receive notice of that hearing or those hearings. So in this case, council may want to consider whether multiple hearings would be needed or larger venues considered based on interest in those hearings. Again, the key impact here would be to preserve open space properties from development as other uses. If there were an open space district created and then that district did not allow for example, residential uses, once a property is rezoned to that district, it could not be developed for that type of use unless there was either a text amendment to change the list of permitted uses within the district or a map amendment to rezone that property outside of the open space district. So again, tonight, seeking council direction on these two phases. Again, phase one, to adopt the open space district to protect open space with standards and special use requirements similar to the R2 district. That would include reviewing the open space district language, likely at a future meeting, and determining which properties to hold map amendment hearings for. Then the council, after proper notice, would hold those hearings, public hearings for both the text amendment and any associated map amendments. And then again, in phase two, as we just talked about in the last item, working through the zoning ordinance rewrite to refine those development standards and uses with feedback from partner agencies, again, looking at existing conditions to tailor those standards and working with the land use consultant on best practices. So that concludes staff presentation. Available for questions. Thank you.
Questions for Scott before we move into public comment?
So to clarify, in phase one, after the ordinance is drafted, if District 36 came to us and said, we're going to tear down Greeley School and we're going to build homes there, they would not be allowed to do that, right?
If open space district was created,
Right.
that was not
Okay.
permitted and it was rezoned,
Okay.
correct?
But then in phase two, the idea would be, and having sat here through these before, right? You know, when District 36 came with a new Greeley playground, or the Park District came with, Indian Hill Playground, they had to go through every step of the process. We might change that process in phase two, make some of those things just by right. And that's the objective in phase two.
That's a possibility, correct. Make them by right, look at, should the height be different for a playground equipment versus a garage and single-family zoning?
Got it, okay.
Go ahead, Tina.
So why are we, if it's going to be a 18 to 24-month process, why are we pulling this out and not having it part of the regular zone rewrite? I think we agreed to that, but now seeing that this work stream really will align with what the consultant that we eventually hire will do, I guess I'm worried about duplication of effort, duplication of hearing notices, and I would argue that if you're going to do this, you probably just send notice to everybody in town versus trying to, draw the 250 feet around each school, each, affected property that would be classified open space. So I guess is there any efficiencies to be gained by doing it this way versus including this now? Although I voted to pull it out and handle it separately originally, but seeing the time frame, is there any efficiencies to just doing it together with a regular code rewrite?
I think that, again, we are responding to resident interest in this topic.
No, I understand
And
that.
so that's the reason to
But-
do it separately
So
and to move forward with it.
I understand, but I think, the residents respond to the caucus surveys. I'm just looking at, now we're looking at two work streams that would essentially be about the same time, and is it efficient to do this slightly ahead, and take it out of the code rewrite just to respond to a caucus survey?
I think this was important enough that we did talk about this before and decided to take it out of this. So
I fully admit that. But I'm now seeing it's essentially a similar time frame.
Well, it's not really a similar
No,
timeframe
it's
because,
not.
and Kristen, what would be the time? First of all, we haven't decided if the public hearing would rest at the council level or perhaps it would go to the Plan Commission level. If it went to the Plan Commission, we could do that as early as September.
If the council did determine that the Plan Commission was a better body to hold the public hearing, September, we could schedule that for the Plan
And it
Commission.
would come back to the council presumably in October. So it's not the same timeframe. It's not 18 to 24 months.
Right, but I
It's
guess,
3 months.
yeah, I guess part of my concern, thinking about it a little bit more, is I viewed this as an opportunity to clarify it, make it better for everybody to understand, instead of having everybody come through with an R1 designation or R2 designation, and then have to, get special use approval or variance approval, to think about it differently. Whereas now I see the phase one is really to, prohibit any use other than, open space. And then go back and address what would be permitted. I'm just concerned about efficiency and clarification.
I guess I didn't comment on the 18 to 24 month. I think we should challenge ourselves to do this faster. I think that if we have to prioritize the two, I would say this is more important than the zoning rewrite. Those zoning issues will be there, and I don't think that they're a huge issue. I think that this open space issue, it's a challenge for us, for our commissions and their time. It's a challenge for our fellow taxing bodies and the burden it places on them and uncertainty it places on them. So I guess if we're saying they're both equal, let's run them together. I guess what I would suggest is we prioritize this higher, we move this along at a faster pace and address this sooner. And if that means we've got to hold off on some of the zoning actions and go slower there, then I would be in favor of that.
Okay.
Agree, Scott.
That's a thought? That's a thought?
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Scott, is that something that we could do as part of this, as part of the zoning rewrite, but also maybe continue on this path with the open space zoning and prioritize it and try to wrap that part of it up sooner than the entire rewrite?
Something we could take a look at for sure. Again, there's some, potential harm in adopting kind of piecemeal, one section of the code before the larger rewrite. But certainly the phase one is something, if there's direction, that we would be able to move forward on, as mentioned, relatively quickly in the next couple months or so. And then the phase two could be in an earlier portion, of the zoning ordinance rewrite potentially.
Okay, that's kind of what you were talking about, Scott, I think. All right, other questions for Scott Mangum?
Scott, with the phase one, what would be the thing that enacts or implements? What would be the change from what we have today? Like, can we distill it down for clarity? What phase one would accomplish versus what's in place right now?
Sure. So right now, many of the open space properties are within the R2 single-family residential zoning district. So theoretically, if that property were to be sold or even the current property owner wanted to develop single-family houses, they could develop that today because in the R2 district, it allows single-family. So by rezoning and creating a new district, the property could not be redeveloped as single-family housing.
It could be, it would just go through more evaluation, there'd be rezoning, and so it's not
That's
a
true.
prohibition.
There's always a process, but it would not be allowed by right within
It
the
wouldn't be
zoning
allowed by
district.
right.
Yeah,
Peter,
thank
do you have any comments on exactly the scope of this, what the text amendment would accomplish?
No, I think you just described it. I think Scott just described it. It would allow, it would prevent a redevelopment of those properties without council approval.
How would implementing phase one now impede or change our sister agencies, school districts, park, library, from being able to, in the normal course of their business, to do their projects, to operate their facilities, to use their property as they see fit for their own use?
See, right now, the way the zoning is in the R2, there's schools, for example, are special uses, so an expansion would require a special use permit. The standards, obviously in the R2 district, are more tailored towards single-family residences with building heights, accessory structure heights, setbacks, lot coverage, impervious, those types of things. So it would be similar to the current restrictions. With that said, the R2 is the most common district, so it is sort of a blunt instrument to be applying the R2 to all those properties. There are properties within most of the zoning districts in town that may have been developed based on the C1, for example, district or C2 district. So there may be some differences from how the properties were originally developed, but it would largely be similar constraints on the properties that there are currently.
Would there be any negative impacts for any of the other agencies to be able to use their property outside of selling it, right, where it could theoretically be developed into housing? But would there be any impact to them to be able to change its use, but still be within, let's say, their intended operations? And New Trier is an easy target, right? They have land, they have practice fields at the Winnetka campus, and they decide, well, we're going to expand our plant, or we're going to, instead of a football field, we're going to put some other purpose there that still serves the school. Would phase one impact their ability to do those things?
So I believe New Trier is currently in the R4 zoning district, and schools are special use there, so an expansion would require a special use permit either way. The standards would be development standards would be a little bit a little bit different by way of being the R2 district instead of the R4 district.
And I use that example. You could use the park district,
sure,
whether it's a practice field or a playground or whatever, as long as it's a park district use, but they could change its purpose. None of that will be impacted by if we go through this phase one, phase two approach, but during the phase one approach.
They would still be special uses either way, right?
Okay, so to clarify, so if there's there's the phase one change in the zoning map, open space to a school, park district, library district, then to come and do any modification to their use, they would still have the relief of a special use permit process.
Still,
Correct.
so
Just
there's
like
no
it is today.
change.
Right.
Rob?
I guess I look at this, seldom has the residents of Winnetka been so clear on something, which is protect our open spaces. As we look at,
Well, can I just,
can I finish my comment, please?
well, no, I know, I think we all agree with that. I just want to make sure that we're doing, that we're thoughtfully thinking through
Of course.
Go ahead, Rob.
We always do that. We will always be thoughtful in this. Like the times we, I guess we look at this, with the reason we talked about it before was some urgency. The times we left things open-ended or kicked the can, not this village, not us, kicked the can down the road on things like plat consolidations, on things like bluff protections, on things like that, we really had little recourse to go back and do things correctly because the horse was already out of the barn. So we pulled it out. We talked about this earlier because it's an important thing. Of course, we're going to be thoughtful to the schools and the park district and everything we're doing here. But I do think it deserves for us to get ahead of the ball for a change here.
But I think the question that Kirk, you're getting to, and it's the right question, we received a nice letter from Board of Education President, New Trier District, Sally Tomlinson. And, the letter talked about, that they don't have any plans for expansion, but, they're concerned about potential changes that could restrict the New Trier's ability to adapt or improve its campus and Winnetka and so on. My understanding of this, Scott, and Kristen, if you want to weigh in, or Peter, you want to weigh in, is that all we're talking about in phase one is the properties go from the current zoning district they're in to an open space zoning, and anything that would have required special use today will require special use tomorrow. Nothing that doesn't require special use today will require special use tomorrow. So anything by right would continue by right. Special use would continue. This would only, it's very targeted to this one issue of the fact that these properties primarily are in residential districts, and they could be, you know, changed by right into residential development. And I think that's all that we're talking about here, I believe. Am I right on that? Go ahead, Kristen.
That's my understanding.
How about you as the attorney? Is that your understanding?
It's all in your direction, but if that's the direction, it can be done.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the direction. So, unless there's more public comment or comment at the dais here, why don't we open this up to public comment? Would anyone in the audience like to make a public comment on this issue? Dan, come on up, introduce yourself, and we hope to see you here before too long with a broader presentation about the schools.
Yes. Dan Waters, 463 Winnetka Avenue. I am the current president of the District 36 School Board, and wanted to just make a few comments tonight. First of all, thanking you all for the intergovernmental cooperation that we continue to have, which mirrors that which we have with the Park District and the library. I think it was really well showcased as we recently completed the referendum work across all 5 of our schools that was completed. We were able to bring significant safety improvements, ADA improvements, and expanded spaces for students, teachers, and staff. While also being able to work together to allow for incremental stormwater at the Crow Island School. And apropos to the earlier discussions, depending on the day, arguably the most important, which is bringing air conditioning to all 5 of our schools, which is a increasingly big relief for the team. I think it was a really clear example of the kind of cooperation the government or our citizens expect. And I think per this discussion, happy to hear some of the comments as we move forward. And I know there is the spirit to ensure that we continue to keep the lines of communication open. And to that end, Dr. Tess, as President Dearborn said, Dr. Tess and I will be here next month to talk about the state of our schools, which I think will give a good overview of the progress we're making both on education, progressive education, student outcomes, and importantly, the initial work that we need to do on the long-term maintenance of our schools. Particularly Skokie, and I think it's helpful to address because I've listened to a number of the conversations that the council has had, and I want to dispel any lingering rumors or myths about our facility, specifically any interest in or notion that the district is interested in contemplating or interested in selling or closing any of the schools. Quite to the contrary, and I understand where some of this comes from. Back in 2019 with the failed referendum that we had in the pre-COVID times, there was talk of closing the Skokie School. For context, at that time, the enrollment in the schools across all 5 schools was 1,612 students. This fall, with the continued influx of family, we're projecting 1,803 students, and that number will certainly rise as more families continue. I think it is important because of that. We know that we are going to need every square foot of space that we have now, but we also need to ensure, and the reason why I bring up Skokie is Skokie School is by far our most complicated and most costly school to maintain. And it is, we've mentioned it at board meetings, and you will see it in the state of the schools. We are going to continue need to do work on that school to keep it as a viable school, but also viable from the standpoint of being, doing our fiduciary duty to taxpayers in terms of maintenance of some of the more complicated pieces of that school. And I think just as the discussion, we need to make sure that as you think of zoning, we're continuing to be able to utilize these properties as we need for the district. Similar to, I talked with Ms. Tomlinson as well about that need. No condos going up in between Skokie and Washburn, but certainly we will need that space. And I think as we think about this and as a bonus lucky strike item here, particularly when we think of the post office and the redevelopment of the post office, just being planful as there is consideration for residential property, and that sits in the Crow Island catchment area, which is a very populated school that we make sure that we work closely with you all to ensure what that density will look like. So I think on behalf of the school board, I want to thank you for the continued engagement. I know we're meeting later this week to further discuss the zoning, but appreciate the time.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Other public comment, President Gibson. welcome.
All right, I don't have a prepared statement, but we, like the other taxing bodies, look forward to collaborating with you on this. I do have to say that the memo has created some confusion for me, and it has not all been erased. The Phase 1 portion of this approach doesn't really make sense to me. There's some questions in how we operate daily that aren't satisfied through Phase 1. Simple things like, maintenance. Currently, if we already have a special use to have a turf field at Skokie Playfields, it's not clear to me here that we would have the right to do a like-kind repair and replace the turf without having to go through the whole special use process. For us, the special use process is somewhat of a budget drain for us, or, we drain a lot of money going through the special use process. So we can't quite figure out how our operations fit within this Phase 1. And I'm just curious to know more about it. Maybe that's something that we can get more information on. We don't really understand. We're also stewards. We also answer to the residents. We also have caucus surveys. We have as our mission in all three options for considering our mission, the protection of open space. So we ourselves are charged with protecting open space. This just creates a whole different level, particularly in the short term, where we're not really sure what some of the Phase 1 provisions will look like. It creates some discomfort for us.
Well, I don't think it should. And Scott, maybe you can confirm this, that this would not affect the ongoing operations of any parcel of property from today's standards and tomorrow's standards, if we went through with Phase 1 here. Nothing will change. Nothing will change. If you want to replace your field and you need to go through a special use process to do it today, you'll have to go through the special use process tomorrow. If you don't have to go through if it's by right, then it would be by right tomorrow. Scott, is that correct? Kristen, is that your understanding?
I'll let Scott speak, but that is my understanding. Spoiler alert.
Well, the ordinance obviously has not been presented or adopted, but if we understand that as being the intent, that it would be written that way.
Yeah, and so, I think that we all agree with that, at least, that
Okay.
this would just.
It's just not clear. There isn't a lot of detail here, so it gives pause.
There's nothing about your maintenance today that is written into our special use process, other than if you make a change and it needs to go through a special use. But if you want to maintain your properties, you can maintain them
In the same fashion in which we have.
in the exact
All
same
right.
fashion, absolutely.
And then as we
Can I ask
are-
a quick question?
Yes.
Did you, when you just redid your tennis courts and the
Mm-hmm.
turf and you replaced, you didn't have to come to us for a special use for that, did you?
Not for the turf, because we already had a special use to have a turf field, so for the replacement, we did not. It was like kind, and I'm not sure with the tennis courts. Do you know, Shannon?
I don't think you came to us.
Yeah. Not even for, what about for the lighting change and stuff?
I don't think we saw it.
I just want to make sure I'm on the microphone. Shannon is all executive director. When we have things that are like kind, then there are not any changes to the footprint. Then currently we do not have to come for an additional special use. I think the question comes along with if it's a new district, is that going to keep in place our current special uses? That's a question that we don't have the answer to as well right
The
now.
answer is yes, because we're going to have our village attorney write it in that way.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
And
Yes.
that was going to, oh, sorry.
Hold on, Kristen, hang on one second, please. Kristen, go ahead.
That was going to be my clarifying point. Part of the objective of today was to make sure that we heard council's direction and were able to give that to the village attorney so that the ordinance reflected council's direction. And hearing this concern about maintenance activities and like for like will assure that the ordinance is drafted to reflect that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elise. Thanks for being here. Other public comment on this agenda item? Any other Park District people like to speak? No? Okay, fine. We'll close public comment. We'll bring it back here. I don't know that there's a unanimous opinion on this, but I think there might be general opinion to have to go forward with this phase one concept. The question I would have is, what do people think about keeping the public hearing at the council level versus having it at the plan commission level? I was sort of in favor of the plan commission level, but I think it's more vetting, more transparency, and so on, but I'd be happy to have it up here too. Any thoughts?
My personal reaction is to have the experts deliberate this. I don't feel, I mean,
I have
we
a
have a
lot
few
of faith-
experts
I have a lot
on
of faith
council
in
here,
our
but
plan committee.
I feel a little bit like that's out of my league to be able to manage that.
Plan commission former chairperson?
I think that the more people that hear it, the better. So I think the Plan Commission's a fine idea.
Yeah, I mean, I was the chair for 8 years, so I agree. I think the Plan Commission's equipped to handle the public hearing.
Okay, all right. Everyone agree with that?
Yeah, I guess I want to see if we can accelerate this, right? I think, we heard a bit from the Park District, right? The more uncertainty, I think if we can clear some of this up faster.
That'd be great.
Why don't-
I agree.
We'll make that part of the RFP, the idea of
Let's go faster.
and go faster on the open space zoning,
Yeah.
the special use provisions, the by right
Yes,
provisions,
yes.
so on. And Scott, so that would be part of the RFP. So I think from a timing standpoint, I mean, Kristen mentioned to me that we could actually do this in August, but I don't think August is the right time to have the plan commission look at this. People are out of town, it's so on and so forth. So why don't we look at September with the idea that it could come back to us, assuming they do it in one meeting or what have you, in October.
Sorry, one other question here. I guess this is a stream of consciousness, which is always dangerous, but
Very.
We can let the Plan Commission just go, right, and deal with this, or we can give some direction, right? And the question I have is our objective here at the council to reduce the number of special use requirements, or do we have no opinion, right? Personally, I feel that the direction to the Plan Commission should be look to reduce special use issues, increase the number of by right changes.
I don't know, Scott, that we haven't, I think we have to let, that's kind of a phase two.
That's not part of phase one, for sure. I'm saying this is more
Right,
phase two.
I think that's
but-
kind of, we have to let the consultants help us on that a little bit. I don't know that we can make that decision right now.
It's just something
Something to
I
think
think we
about.
need to be
Okay.
thinking about.
Okay. Good point. Are we all, Scott, do you have the direction you need on this issue?
Is the only other one question be, is there direction tonight on which properties to include in the open space district? Because that would affect the notice for the public hearings.
I think it's green space.
So just everything that's a park, a public school, or the library? Is that kind
Well,
of?
the library has a
the list?
parcel that would be in there, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Our village-owned properties would be in there, street ends, other properties we might own that are. So there, yeah, I think that you can work with, I think we need to reach out to our sister jurisdictions here, talk to them about how they would view these properties that should be in there. I think it's defined, the caucus survey was pretty clear, it's green space. It's open space, green space.
But not to be hyper-technical about this, but I remember looking at Skokie School, and there may be more than one pin, right? So I think you need to, I think that's something we have to consult with the village attorney on, as to, you know, it's not just defined green space.
And are we talking only public-owned property, or does this also include institutional uses like churches?
No, we're talking publicly owned property,
Okay.
not church property.
We did talk about part of the code amendment, creating like an institutional use
That
for
might
like
come in
church. That
phase
would be
2.
part of that other work stream, I think.
Do you mind if I just summarize what I understand, what we're being asked of in the phase 1?
Okay.
Or what the change is? So, and it, full disclosure, I had some conversation with staff today. From what I understand, phase 1 does, essentially the only change is if there's publicly owned land, that the changes, they can't sell the property to a private entity that could then develop it as of right. They would have to get approval through the special use process to do that.
Oh, they would have to rezone the property.
They would have to rezone it, which means they would have to go through the whole.
It'd be an extra layer of evaluation. Correct.
Okay. That's really the only thing that we're changing with phase 1.
That's the direction we're giving the council on that. I mean, there's absolutely no intent to change the operations of the facilities, of our village facilities, of D36, New Trier, School Board, Park District.
Okay.
Nothing. And that's what we need to come out. I think that the direction of the Plan Commission will be to review this. They're gonna know the background of all this. They can hold the public hearing. They can bring a policy recommendation back to us. We all okay with that? Okay, thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on now to item 9C, council priorities. Our village manager is going to review mid-year status report, and we're going to be reviewing priorities. We're not going to spend a lot of time on accomplishments from last May to now, but we wanted to sort of put a chronological order on what we're going to be looking at, and, you know, people after the fact can give thoughts on that.
It's been a while since I've presented. Need a minute to get my computer going here. Okay, there we go. So, as President Dearborn mentioned, we're going to focus first on our priorities coming up for July through April of '27. And we've outlined a very tentative, and I bold, underscore, and highlight the word tentative for our schedule and plan, where we're looking for council direction or approval for some key priorities in the coming year. So I love a to-do list where you can immediately check 2 things off the list at the top. We have discussed tonight the open space zoning and the code rewrite. Thank you for your direction there. In August at the first meeting, Hannah will be presenting the outcome of the parking strategy analysis, as well as update you on what we heard were the next steps for the village-owned street ends from that study session. There was a comprehensive list, and we do anticipate regularly updating you quarterly, because some of those initiatives are long-term in nature. In August, we will brief you on our communication and marketing strategy. Then September 1st, some council direction. We'll have the peer review results from the Stormwater, the West Side project. And then October 6th, we'll be looking at the Hubbard Woods streetscape as well as hopefully the Willow Road jurisdictional transfer initiative. October 13th, we're actually going to meet that date that we pinned on the calendar for hearing community feedback on the post office. The survey is well underway. We have the 2 open houses, and there will be council direction on next steps there. And our favorite day of the year, October 29th, no more members of the public here to come all day, where we go line by line and look at the department head's balanced budget. They did have a question, President Dearborn. It's a 10-minute rule for presentations, count for the budget.
I'd like to discuss that. I think it should be that longer.
At least 5 minutes.
5
Shorter.
minutes.
We'll figure that out.
Then you'll notice a few date challenges here. We're back to September. We'll have an update on the Tower Road Pier. And then we are coming forward with one of our big projects this year that Hannah and Tim Sloth, our Chief Financial Officer, are leading, which is replacing our legacy ERP system that is no longer sold and putting in a new, more modern ERP. So we do anticipate asking for council approval of a project consultant to assist us with that. And then October 13th, we'll be updating on the Village Hall renovation. In November, we do anticipate the build agenda will potentially be gaining traction again in the veto session. So we'd like to engage with council at whatever version they're at and get your feedback and policy direction on that state legislation. In November, we'll be discussing the East Side Stormwater peer review results, and then December, the Swank Agency Agreement renewal is coming forward. In the first quarter of 27, we are excited to, targeting January, be able to come to you with our CRM, Customer Relationship Management demo. And this was, I think, 3 years ago, Trustee Handler recommended this in the budget. And we've gotten to the point where we're ready to roll that out by the end of this year. So we're looking forward to demoing that to you and to the community. Green Bay Trail Plan update in February. Nick will be back for some long lead time items in March on the generation project. And then we'll also be discussing the Green Bay Road streetscape with Kenilworth. We're still working on the Hubbard Woods train station renovation project. We are working with UP to try to get that project moving forward, and we'll schedule that in as we have an update. So you can see quite the packed schedule of priorities, and I'd be happy to take any questions or if there's anything that should be on the list that was as an oversight.
Questions for Kristen?
I have a question on the post office, right? We've got it slotted October 13th. What are we envisioning it goes from there, right? We're obviously not that day going to pick the answer and go. So how do you see follow-on meetings slotting into this?
So that depends on what the direction is on the 13th, right? Because there's the two key pathways with some variations of the open space approach all the way to the full development. So with open space, if that is the direction council wants to go, there'll be a process because the village will need to lead that initiative to identify a landscape architect, a design, and what does that process look like. If we go the more developed process, that would involve determining, are we doing an RFP? Think what we did with Tala Coffee, where we issued a request for proposals, a request for developers interested in that project. So the timeline and how things get slotted in really hinge on what happens at that October 13th meeting.
But there's, on the schedule, I think, Kristen, you had subsequent meetings sort of slotted in for post office discussion. We're not expecting final decisions on October 13th. So there will be future meetings.
There will be, definitely be future meetings, just how and when hinges on which direction we
Yeah.
go.
And pre-meetings, and meetings about meetings.
Any other questions for Kristen? She's, again, tentative. We don't have to go through the accomplishments. I think this group has done a fantastic job on a lot of different issues, and it's a heavy lift here. We got a lot going on. But we wanted to put it out so people have a sense of what the next, period of time up until April 30th or so will look like.
If you could, I'd love to get a copy of I'll read the accomplishments. I'd love to get a copy of that if you could send it as well. That's great.
You want to just send it out separately?
Sure.
Okay.
Happy to do so.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay. We're moving on. Item 10, new business, none. Item 11, appointments, none. Item 12, closed session. I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussing the purchase of real property and probable imminent and pending litigation pursuant to Sections 2C5 and Section 2C11 of the Open Meetings Act. Under the motion, when we adjourn the closed session, this public meeting will automatically and immediately adjourn without the conduct of any further business or comments. May I have that motion?
So moved.
And that's, Kristen, that's a roll call vote.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Orsick?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. Let's move on to closed session.